You look up and your cat is staring at you, not glancing, not the casual eye contact of a creature moving through a space you both occupy. A full, sustained, unblinking stare, directed at you, held for long enough that you notice it, long enough that it starts to feel like something. You look back. They don't look away. You look away and look back again. Still there. Still watching. The stare continues with a patience that has no equivalent in human social interaction, because in human social interaction, a stare this sustained would carry an obvious meaning that you would address immediately. From your cat, it carries no obvious meaning at all, or so it seems. The unblinking stare is one of the most discussed and least understood behaviours in the cat-human relationship, partly because it looks so different depending on context. The same eyes, the same sustained gaze, but aimed at a bird through the window, it carries one energy. Aimed at you across the room, it carries another. Aimed at nothing visible in the corner of the ceiling at 3 a.m, it carries something else entirely. Context is almost everything with the stare, and the context that produces the stare directed at you, specifically, is the one worth understanding. Here is the first thing to know. In cat social language, a direct sustained gaze is not neutral. An unblinking stare between cats who don't know each other is a form of social pressure. It is the assertion of presence, the signal that this individual is not backing down, not looking away, not conceding the space. It is not aggression, exactly, but it is adjacent to it. It is the visual equivalent of holding your ground. This is why it matters so much that your cat stares at you without apparent tension. The stare directed at you is using the same eyes, the same sustained contact, but the body around those eyes tells a completely different story. Relaxed body, soft posture, no raised fur, no flattened ears, no tail lashing. The gaze is held, but without the physical architecture of threat. What you are seeing is not the stare of a cat asserting dominance over a perceived rival. It is something else. What it is depends on what accompanies it. A cat who stares at you from a relaxed position, body loose, in an environment that feels calm and safe, is doing something that behaviorists describe as social monitoring. Maintaining awareness of your location, your state, your movements without the urgency of a threat-based alert. They are keeping track of you, not because they are anxious about you, but because you are one of the most important and interesting things in their environment. And keeping track of important and interesting things is what they do. Cats are extraordinarily attentive to their environment. They monitor changes in sound, light, smell, and movement with a precision built from survival instincts that have not disappeared simply because they live in a house with reliable food. The monitoring of your movements and state is a constant background process, and the stare is what happens when that monitoring becomes something that requires visual attention. When what you're doing or how you're being is something that warrants more focused processing. This is why cats often stare at you when you're doing something they haven't seen before, or when your emotional state has shifted in a way their body chemistry can detect. You are an interesting and changing variable in a world they're constantly reading, and when the variable changes, they look. Your cat is reading you constantly. Your scent, your posture, your emotional state, the micro-expressions your face makes when you think no one is watching. They build a detailed model of you, and most owners never realize how complete that model is. I put together a guide covering exactly that layer. The signals cats send and the signals they read from you that most people never learn to recognize. It's called What Your Cat is Hiding, and the link is in the description. If you've ever felt like your cat understands you on a level you can't fully explain, that guide is going to show you why that feeling is more accurate than you think. There's a second kind of stare that is worth distinguishing from the monitoring stare, and it's the one most people are describing when they say their cat stares at them. This is the attention stare. The stare that precedes a request for food, for play, for access to something, for your presence in a different part of the house. The cat who stares at you from across the room, and then when you make eye contact, walks toward the kitchen or toward the door or toward wherever they want you to go, was staring because they were waiting for you to notice them. The stare was the beginning of a communication that required your awareness to proceed. This is distinct from monitoring in one key way. It is directed. The monitoring stare is passive. The cat is watching, processing, keeping track. The attention stare is active. The cat is waiting for a response, and when they get it, they do something with it. If your cat stares at you and then immediately does nothing when you look back, they were probably monitoring. If your cat stares at you and then responds to your returned gaze by vocalizing, moving towards something, or leading you somewhere, they were asking. Cats have learned, through years of living with humans, that eye contact is a way to initiate communication with the large, slow, visually oriented creatures they share a house with. The stare is, in this reading, an adaptation, a behavior that cats have developed specifically in the context of human cohabitation, using the visual channel that humans are most responsive to. They have learned that looking at you gets your attention in a way that looking at the wall does not. There is a third kind of stare that is worth knowing about, because it comes up often enough that ignoring it would leave something out. The comfort stare. The stare that happens when your cat is settled, relaxed, not asking for anything, not urgently monitoring, just looking at you from wherever they are. The eyes may be slightly soft, the body completely at ease, the stare held without tension or expectation. This is the stare of a cat who is simply aware of you, who finds the fact of your presence in the room worth directing their attention toward, who, in the absence of anything more pressing, is choosing to look at you. This stare is the hardest to explain because it serves no obvious function. It is not requesting, not monitoring for threat, not processing a change in the environment. It is, as far as behavioral research can determine, something like what it looks like. A creature attending to someone whose presence matters to them. Not urgently, not for a specific purpose. Just awareness, attention. The soft, sustained gaze of something that notices you are there and finds the fact of your being there worth registering. In a relationship built almost entirely on signal and scent and the accumulated weight of shared space, the fact that your cat sometimes just looks at you, not for any reason that serves a function, just because you're there and they are looking, is one of the quieter and more specific expressions of what the relationship has become. They know you are in the room, they are looking at you, they are not looking away. If your cat does this, the long unblinking stare that doesn't seem to want anything, that isn't tracking a threat, that is simply there. Notice it the next time. Meet their eyes, hold the contact, slow blink if you want, and see what happens. But even if you don't slow blink, even if you just look back, there is something worth sitting with in the fact that you are being looked at by something that chose to look. Tell me in the comments, does your cat do this? The sustained stare that doesn't seem to want anything? When does it happen? What do you do when you notice it? I want to hear the specific moments, because I think what people describe when they talk about being stared at by their cat says something about the particular quality of this kind of attention that deserves to be said out loud. The question of why cats don't blink during a stare is worth addressing directly, because it's part of what makes the behaviour feel uncanny. Humans blink frequently, every few seconds, automatically, to keep the eye surface lubricated. We also blink more when we are uncertain, processing, or emotionally activated. A sustained unblinking gaze in a human requires conscious effort, which is part of why it carries social weight. It signals that something is being deliberately held, deliberately sustained. Cats blink much less frequently than humans in baseline conditions. Their eye surface has different lubrication needs, and their visual processing is calibrated to detect movement, which requires sustained focus without the interruption of a blink. The unblinking stare is not for a cat an unusual effort. It is simply the way they look at things they are paying attention to. What this means is that the sustained unblinking quality of your cat's stare is not quite the signal it would be coming from a human. They are not making an effort, they are simply paying attention in the way they pay attention. The stare directed at you is the stare of a creature designed to watch things carefully, watching you carefully, and yet the direction of it matters. Cats watch many things: birds through the window, dust motes in a shaft of light, the corner of the room where something rustled an hour ago. The stare directed at you is the stare directed at something worth watching. In the full catalogue of things available to their attention, you are what they chose to look at. That choice carries something, even if the mechanism of the stare is simply how they look at anything they consider worth looking at. You are worth looking at. That is what the stare says. Not urgently, not with tension, not with expectation necessarily. Just, you are here, and you are worth the attention. The cat who stares at you from across the room has made a selection from everything available in the environment and directed their attention at you. You are the most interesting thing in the room. You are the thing worth watching. You are the one they chose to look at. In the slow, sustained, unblinking way of a species built to watch what matters. That is the stare. Nothing more complicated than that, and also nothing less. One more version of the stare that people describe and that deserves its own moment. The stare that wakes you up. You are asleep. Something pulls you out of sleep, not a sound, not a disturbance, just a feeling. You open your eyes and your cat is there, inches from your face, or at the foot of the bed, or in the doorway, staring at you. You have been watched into wakefulness. This happens often enough that it has become its own category of cat owner experience, distinct enough that people describe it with a specific quality of unease that the daytime stare doesn't carry, and there is something to that quality. The stare that wakes you is, in most cases, the attention stare. The cat has something they want, typically food or access, and has calculated that the most efficient path to getting it is your consciousness. They have used sustained visual attention directed at your sleeping face to accomplish what vocalization might accomplish less reliably. What is remarkable about this is not the staring. It is the knowledge that you can be reached this way, that your sleeping face, oriented toward the cat, is a surface they can focus on until you surface from sleep. They have learned this about you. They know that you respond to being watched even when you are not watching back. They have used this knowledge deliberately to communicate with you in the only way available to them in the dark. The stare that wakes you is not mysterious. It is your cat using the tool they have, with the knowledge of you that months or years of observation have built, to reach you when they need to. It is one of the more intimate things they do, if you understand what it requires. A specific model of you as a creature who can be reached this way, and the patience to hold the stare until you surface. You woke up because your cat was watching you. They knew you would.